Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so today I feature to you the best teams to use with that new and blue shiny Mew that you have for Monday when Kanto Cup finally rolls around. Anyways, first off, we're going to analyze Mew and where it's actually best at, then we're going to go into the teams. So overall, Mew ranks at number 7. Best used in the lead and the closer. Wouldn't use it as a switch, there's a lot better switches out there for the Kanto Cup. What makes Mew kind of dangerous to use as a switch, it's not super bulky, and the meta that Kanto Cup offers isn't too kind of it if you switch a Mew into it. Unless you have a specific strategy where you're trying to break shields with Mew. As you see here, Mew does really great against the Hypno Marowak core. The reason it's a sense of better than Hypno, not necessarily as like overall, but it's able to, it definitely puts a lot more pressure than Hypno can because of its Shadow Claw and its charge moveset. If you lose the lead against Mew, you can still break shields and threaten shields with Wild Charge, and then you can use your back row to finish off the match. As you see here, Mew ranks at number 3 in the lead, taking out what I mentioned before. It also does really well against the Water Archetype, and you don't really want to use anything other than Surf. The reason you want Surf is to cover Alola Marowak, and a lot of other movesets that Mew has to offer aren't really needed in the Kanto Cup, just because Kanto Cup is a condensed meta. Because of that, there's not a lot of typings that are flying around that really need a lot of, And Wild Charge actually just does us so much damage. With such little rock and ground coverage not really rock, ground in Kanto Cup, there's really no reason, there's not a lot of things that will resist Wild Charge, so it's going to hurt a lot. Even against dragons like Dragonair, etc., it'll still do a decent chunk of damage before it goes down. And as a switch, Mew doesn't really rank that high. It ranks at number 35. So the thing about Mew is that, as you see here, Mew beats what I mentioned before. It even beats Dugong. But you lose against Charmers and you lose against Snorlax really hard. Snorlax is a very good safe switch in the Kanto Cup. I've seen quite a few the last time Kanto Cup was around, so you don't really want to lock it in with Snorlax or even a Wigglytuff. 666 isn't a joke. This thing gets, 2 shield farm down is a thing, and because Wigglytuff has normal typing, it will resist your Shadow Claws, so don't use Mew as a switch. In the closer, Mew ranks at number 8, so if you don't have any shields, Mew's, like I mentioned with Wild Charge, it's probably going to run you over. As you see here in the closer, it takes out Lapras, it can take out Wigglytuff. Shadow Champ, Alolan Sandslash, you do have some key losses though. You will lose to Hypno just because its Shadow Ball will yeet you to the next dimension. Alola Marowak will Shadow Bone you to oblivion, and Snorlax licks you down. And Dragonair just does so much damage. And Alolan Raichu will just basically Wild Charge you to death, because you can't KO it with your Wild Charge. The thing about Mew is what I mentioned is its bulk. That's what really costs it a lot of match. In Great League, Mew isn't the thickest boy in the world, as you see here. If we go to Great League and you check out Mew, it doesn't really have super high stats as far as stamina goes. It's very balanced in a sense, but it's not like if comparable to things like Snorlax, Lapras. It just doesn't have the stamina to take moves if it really has to like tank something. If it resists things, like if it's a Shadow Champ trying to punch it down, it can survive a decent amount of damage, but it's not thick. Not thick at all. Alright, so the first team I have with Mew, as you see here, Mew is best used as the lead. So a lot of these teams that I feature will have Mew in the lead. Mew best functions as like trying to win the lead or as a shield breaker. In other words, you try to threaten with Wild Charge and Surf. Like even if you do get like a Dragonair in the lead, you can still threaten shields and take your opponent out with the back row. As you see here, we got Mew, Snorlax, and Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales Powder Snow buff with the new Weather Ball move makes it really, really good for the Kanto Cup. In fact, it's probably the fastest thing in this cup, because Powder Snow takes, I believe, 5-4-5, so it can get to Weather Balls very quickly. Snorlax is your safe switch. Snorlax is a very powerful safe switch in the Kanto Cup because of its bulk and it's basically just overall coverage. As you see here, this team it has a lot of coverage. It covers a lot of the meta really well. The bulk isn't that high, but it's only solely because of Mew. Again, what I mentioned, Mew isn't the thickest thing in the world, so this bulk rating does take a hit. It's pretty safe though. it's a good safe. Like, I wouldn't really worry too much about safety in the Kanto Cup, because there's not a lot of things that are going to nuke you to oblivion. Unless it's other Mews, or like Pip, or like if they have like energy lead. And it's very consistent, so it's going to do a lot of damage. Like I mentioned, Alolan Ninetales is able to hit really hard with Weather Balls really quickly. Snorlax, even though it does take not really forever to get the Body Slams, Super Power Body Slam has great coverage, and Mew is, of course, with Shadow Claw, gets to its moves very quickly as well. So, decent damage output. As you see here, you do pretty well against the meta. Unless you get a Licker or Alolan Muck in the lead, well, then you have Snorlax as your safe switch, as you see here, and Alolan Ninetales can probably do some damage in the back. If you get Mew in the closer against a lot of things like Snorlax and Lickitung, and it has energy, you could possibly nuke them down with Wild Charge. So as you see here, it does pretty decent against the overall meta. The thing that Mew really suffocates against is probably the normal types, as you see here, because Shadow Claw is resisted. But the thing about Mew is that you're not really looking to do fast move damage. You're mostly looking to just like nuke everything with its back row moves. If you're able to expertly use Wild Charge and Surf, you're gonna come out of the matchup with shield advantage. Very likely. As you see here, your most potential threats are, look what I mentioned, normal types. Alolan Ninetales, which you probably will see a lot as well, Alolan Muck, and Raichu. So about 1, 2, probably 3 really common combinations, unless you see Lickitung XL like no tomorrow, which might be, because of the Kanto event, there might be a chance you might see it. The keyword is might. So you might see a lot of Lickitung XLs, who knows. But the thing about, about the Kanto Cup is that there's not a lot of normal types that are really good, unless it's like Wigglytuff. But you can see Wigglytuff, you can see Snorlax. I've seen those two a lot, along with Alolan Muck. So those 3, if you do see those 3, you can switch out, or you can stay in and break shields, what I mentioned before. Even though Mew does technically lose against Alolan Muck, you do outpace Alolan Muck to 2 Wild Charges. So you should be able to expend 1 shield on your end, and then get both of their shields on their end, if they don't want to take both Wild Charges, or deal heavy damage, either or. Anyways, threat score is 591, below 600. So it's decent, not the best thing in the world, but like what I mentioned, it does fall to 3 popular patterns. That's just Mew in general in the lead. If you lead with Mew, again, normal typings are going to be your biggest weakness, along with, I would say, Dragonair, and probably like Wigglytuff, which is your primary Charmer. You probably won't see a lot of Clefables, because Wigglytuff is thicker, and Wigglytuff, like, there's no real reason to run Clefable. Along with Venusaur, yes, you do lose to Venusaur, but because of Hypno running around and Alolan Muck, you probably won't see a lot of Venusaurs running around. Very unlikely you will. I didn't see a lot in the last time I came around either, so yeah. But this team's very good. This team's very decent. If you like Snorlax's bulk and like Alolan Ninetales, then this team is for you. Alright, next we have Snorlax, Mew, and Lapras. You notice I'm putting Snorlax and Mew together a lot. Not just because Snorlax has a lot of bulk. Like I mentioned, Mew isn't the bulkiest thing in the world, so because of that, you kind of need to make up for it. Unless you literally face an entire team that's weak to Mew, then you're just really happy. So as you see here, Snorlax is in the lead. Snorlax is a great lead because even though Lick might be resisted by some things, Body Slam and Superpower can threaten, and Snorlax has a lot of bulk. So there's a lot of things you can do with Snorlax. Mew is your back row. Lapras, I don't recommend Mew as your safe switch. Lapras here is your safe switch. So Lapras is thick, and unless you get locked into a fighter, Lapras is pretty dang good in this meta. That or rocks, either one, or electric types. So 3 things, but Lapras is yours. Like, Lapras will be your safe switch. Otherwise, you can safe switch into Mew, but I don't recommend it. As you see, this team is very, very good across the board. Good coverage, good bulk, pretty safe and consistent, just because of the pattern. You can see, like, you're weak to some patterns, like I mentioned the fighting pattern, but you're pretty good. You'll deal a decent amount of damage. So you look down here, you do really well against the meta. As you see here, you're able to take out Hypno, Alolan Muck, especially Hypno. If they have Hypno, you're pretty comfortable. But as you see here, if they have Hypno or if they have Dugong, you do really well. The Alolan Sandslash, this team has a lot of coverage against the meta. Your biggest kind of if is, like I mentioned with the normal type thing, Snorlax does kind of fall to Wigglytuff too, just because Lick's resisted. Lapras is also very thick, and it charges decent with Ice Shard. That's why you lose against Lapras. Lola, it's pretty much the same thing with Alolan Ninetales. If it outpaces you or does a decent chunk of damage, like with Dragonair or Venusaur, Snorlax isn't very comfortable. However, that's what you have Mew and Lapras for. So Mew and Lapras can cover whatever Snorlax is weak against. However, if you do lose the lead with Snorlax, Snorlax isn't a shield breaker per se, so you're going to have to be a little fancy if you do lose the lead with Snorlax. As you see here, your potential threats are Venusaur, Chansey, normal types, which is Chansey, and then you also have Wigglytuff. Venusaur is your biggest threat, but the reason why I'm not I wouldn't write off Venusaur completely, but the reason why Venusaur is incredibly unlikely is just because Hypno. There's a lot of things Venusaur is weak to. There's a lot of things Venusaur is weak to in this meta. Primarily Hypno, Alola Marowak, which are two pretty popular mons from the last time Kanto Cup was around. It's also weak to Alola Ninetales, so there's a lot of things Venusaur does not like in this newer meta, so you probably won't see a lot of Venusaurs around. Chansey is also very unlikely either. Raichu, maybe. I don't foresee it. Or Clefable. I would say your bigger concern is probably Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff, like I mentioned, is like probably one of your biggest concerns, along with Ninetales and Dragonair. So Dragonair is a really great lead if it doesn't resist Dragon Breath, or basically if it's not a fairy, just because Dragon Breath does so much damage. So that's why you're gonna lose against Dragonair. Unfortunately, even Thick Boy Lax is not thick enough to take a ton of Dragon Breath damage, so you'll probably come out matchup with shield advantage, but it just really depends. You also lose, like, Lapras is thick as well. Lapras' ability to get to Surfs and 4 Ice Shards is the reason why you lose against it, and of course Machamp will punch Snorlax to the next dimension. So just be careful of that. So fighting types. But very good overall. Threat score is, as you see below here, 660. Pretty dang high, but like I mentioned, most of the combinations you see here you probably won't see. So it's a pretty decent team. It's a pretty decent team, as long as you can avoid Charm. Well, a lot of people run Wigglytuff, but that's what you have Mew and Lapras for. So there's a lot of ways you can play out of it. Alright, for the third team, I feature Lapras lead, Hypno, and Mew. Now, you probably think the double Psychic strat is probably really bad. I think so too. However, one of my friends mentioned this line, and it's not that bad. If you look at, because Hypno's a pretty good save switch, despite the fact that, like, Alola and Muck and everything are running around, Lapras is pretty dang good in the lead if you can encounter Alolan Muck or like Alolan Muck first, and it doesn't do bad against Marowak. As you see, good coverage, good bulk, good consistency, very safe. As you see here, it's very safe because you do a lot of you're able to cover a lot of Hypno and Mew's weaknesses with Lapras. If you get really unlucky and you get like a Machamp lead or something, well, if you get Machamp, that's good because you cover the back row. However, as you see here on the meta scorecard, you lose to other Mews. Well, not really lose, but like if you don't call the wild charge, it's gonna suck. You do decently unless Alola Marowak, Alolan Graveler will rock your world, and Ninetales will. Well, you'll bait shields with Ninetales, and you'll do good against Venusaur. The thing about Venusaur, though, like I said, you probably won't see a lot of Venusaurs because Venusaur will die to Hypno. As you see here, it has a big red X, so Hypno and Mew can take. Well, not really Mew, but Hypno can give Venusaur a problem if you can line up against it. As you hear, does decent against a lot of the meta. The Lapras is able, like I mentioned, Lapras, and then you have Hypno and Mew to cover. So, very decent team. Your weaknesses are what makes it really interesting. As you see here, your biggest weaknesses is literally Persian. Which, if you're using a Persian in here, yeah. You're weak to other Mews. Like, you do decent against other Mews. It's not a hard loss or anything like that. Very neutral. Again, you have to call the wild charges, though, so you're probably going to have to double shield Lapras, if anything, or you're going to have to eat one wild charge at least. So, you're going to have to make something happen if you see Mew in the lead. Alolan Graveler rocks your world. Again, like, I don't foresee a lot of Alolan Gravelers. I didn't see a lot the last time around, but it's still pretty good in this meta. So, if you do see one, those Volt Switches will chunk, so make sure you switch out. And as you see here, Raichu, which, of course, because of electric types. However, with so many other things being better, I don't foresee you seeing a lot of Alola Raichus, or even Raichus in general. And, of course, other Laprases, which is a neutral matchup. So, pretty good team. Again, not many weaknesses, because you cover most of what's in front with Lapras. So, this is a very bulk, like, Lapras as a bulk to put in the front, and Hypno as your safe switch works really well in the Kanto Cup. You likely have a Lapras and Hypno built, so this is a pretty good team to run if you already have these two. So you don't have to spend a lot of them. So do you like spice? I do too. I'm not very, well, I can be spicy, but I don't really dabble in the spice. Well, I used a freaking Hydreigon match there. What the hell am I talking about? I can do spice, but I can also do meta. This is spice. So welcome, if you like spice, this is for you. It's also a pretty cheap team too. Mew, Raichu, and Beedrill. And you're like, wait, what? Yep, this team is actually pretty dang good. Now, you don't have a lot of bulk, however, as you see here, like you'll see. Good coverage, good safety, good consistency. All of these three aren't very bulky. They're meant to do a crap ton of damage. As you see here, you do really well against a lot of the stuff in the meta. You beat Lickitung in the back, you beat Mew in the back as well. You have double coverage against Lapras. You take out Alola Marowak right away in the front so that you don't have to worry about it in your back row, and it's a lot of coverage. You even cover Wigglytuff with Beedrill, because Beedrill is like the only poison type other than like Alolan Muck that's probably really viable in the Kanto Cup. As you see here, Alolan Muck can be a little bit of a problem, but again, just break shields with Alolan Muck, and then you can send Raichu in its base and then Wild Charge it again. So, having double Wild Chargers is very threatening because, like I said, you don't see a lot of grass types like Venusaur, and you probably won't see a lot of ground types. So, the double Wild Charge strat is pretty nasty. Again, if you look down here, you do really well against a lot of really big meta. Your biggest threats are going to be Haunter and Gengar. It's also really kind of, like, there's not a lot of threats for you. Alolan Graveler is your biggest threat. Pretty expensive. Again, you probably won't see it a lot. If you do, it kind of sucks. But Mew can actually threaten with Surf, because Rock is weak to water. So you have a decent matchup against all three of these. So there's chances. You're not completely written out. Gengar and Haunter are almost never going to be used in this meta. You can use them, but if you see Hypno and you see Alolan Muck, you die. You see a lot of things, you die. You see Wigglytuff, you probably will die if you're not running Sludge Bomb. So Gengar and Haunter are just really risky. That's why you probably have never seen them in Kanto Cup. I think I saw it like once, like twice, but even then, it's very risky to run both of them. You won't see a lot of Sandslash, like I mentioned, ground types, because of the double Wild Charge. And pretty much the things you just have to worry about, again, Alolan Muck, which you still have play against, Alolan Muck, Dragonair, and Alolan Ninetales. You also have to worry about Wigglytuff, because Wigglytuff will charm you down, but like I mentioned, you can just double Wild Charge it to death. So this is a pretty spicy team with Raichu and Beedrill. Raichu is a great safe switch because it features Wild Charge, and again, Mew with Wild Charge. Now, if you see a ground type or a grass type, which you probably won't see, it's probably gonna suck. But other than that, as you see, you will pressure the meta very heavily with this team. Beedrill's cheap, Raichu's readily available. It's been out since Generation 1, so unless you recently started playing Pokemon Go, you probably might have a Raichu built or the Candy built for one. Again, very spicy team. If you want to use it, it's actually pretty dang good in this meta. Double Wild Charge is not a bad idea. Alright, so the most powerful team in my opinion, well, this is actually the strongest one that I've generated. Or at least I think that actually works best with Mew, and unfortunately it actually requires Lickitung XL. So the thing about Mew is that Mew is best used as a lead, right? So if you have Mew and Lickitung with Alola Ninetales, it actually generates this. As you see here, great coverage across top meta threats. Lick and Power Whip is a very powerful move, and it's able to cover a surprisingly lot of things. Overall, this team actually has a bunch of it's very you'll see. Here you go. So as you see, great bulk, great safety, good safety, and it's consistent. So it's going to do consistent damage because all these moves, you're going to spam a lot of charge moves, and you have a lot of great matchups against the meta. As you see here, as long as you don't see, even if you do see, Snorlax or anything, you can pivot out of it. So Lickitung XL actually has great potential against a lot of things. It can break shields, and then you can leave Mew in the back with shield advantage, or you could stack Lickitung XL. However, as you see here, it does really well. So it does really well. It's very strong for the sense that, there's nothing that really hard counters this combination except Alolan Raticate and Mew, and Snorlax, which would give Mew, the reason why this team is so good against Snorlax is because Lickitung XL actually resists, Lickitung XL and Snorlax actually resist each other's Lick, so you just plug Lickitung XL versus Snorlax, and Lickitung XL actually has a bunch of coverage against a lot of the meta, barring that they have a Wigglytuff in the back or a Venusaur, which isn't likely. And then Alola Ninetales with Weather Ball is able to do a lot of damage, as you see here. So, very strong. Again, potential threats are just other normal types, or just Alolan Muck. But even then, Lickitung can, just literally body slam Alolan Muck to death. As long as, it's not that bad as far as Alolan Muck goes. That's what makes Lickitung XL a pretty dang good switch, is because it can just literally body slam things to oblivion just because it's so thick. So it's a very thick Pokemon, and this actually has a very low threat score of 543. As you see here, a lot of Pokemon, like minus like Alolan, you have probably like 4 patterns, and you can pivot out of all of them. So you have chances, so you can sack Lickitung against Snorlax, beat it with Alolan Ninetales, send you back in to close out the match. You can do the same thing with essentially Wigglytuff and Alolan Raticate, send in Lickitung to try to break shields, and then send in Alolan Ninetales, and then you can close out with Mew. So there's a lot of ways you can pivot out with this team. The problem with this team is that it's expensive. Mew itself is expensive, but Lickitung XL is extremely expensive. Even if you do go to the Kanto event and you do have enough for Lickitung XL, it takes a lot of Stardust. Almost, I believe, from level... level 4... If level 4... Hold on, I'm trying to figure it out real quick. If level 40 to 50 is... Let's see. I'm just trying to figure it out in my head. Well, not really in my head. So it's 250,000 dust. That's just to level 40 to 50 alone. Level 0 to... Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of Stardust, okay? You're going to spend at least 500 grand if you're trying to make a Lickitung XL. So if you have the resources, this team works for you. Lickitung XL is also great in other picks or other cups, so you might consider using it for the future. However, that's given if you can actually get enough Lickitung XL candy for the Kanto event. So again, this team is very good, but very expensive. Alolan Ninetales isn't like cheap either. Alolan Ninetales, I think in its second move from Vulpix is actually like, I think it's like, yeah, it's 50,000. So from what I remember, it's 50,000. It's 50,000 second move, and it's hard to get a good one unless you actually grind it for one, which really sucks. So yeah, it's not a dust friendly team. Does really well, but this is definitely the best combination I've definitely put out before. Just because Lickitung XL can actually create a lot of plays for you, and it's incredibly thick. It's also the strongest Pokemon in the Kanto Cup statistically overall. Anyways, I hope one of these teams help you guys out. Again, this is like the best teams I could create with Mew. Mew's a lot of fun. Yes, it's number 3 overall, but it can get taken out by some things. Not the thickest boy in the world, but it can deal a lot of damage, and I know you are just dying to use your Shining Mew. So I'll be doing another video on consistent like Kanto Cup teams. For now, I just want to do the Mew team because I know a lot of you are really excited to use your Mews. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets. Hopefully, if you haven't made Legend yet, you are getting there or you're close, and I'll see you guys in the next video.